In this video we're going to show you how to replace the Digitizer on an iPad 3. First thing we want to do is make sure everything on the iPad itself functions. So we'll test the volume up, volume down, the mute, the sleep wake. And we're also going to test the Digitizer to see if there's any current problems. By grabbing an icon, you can move it all over the screen. If the icon drops, that would indicate a dead spot or a defect in the Digitizer. Test the home button. And then we'll go ahead and test both front and rear camera and record a little video to make sure our microphone up at the top is functioning. Once we're satisfied that everything functions, we will go ahead and power it down by pressing and holding the power button at the very top and slide it to shut it off. Okay, within the kit you're going to get a Phillips screwdriver, an iSesmo tool, a nylon spudger, and 6 guitar picks. A few items that are not included but we highly recommend would be a pair of safety goggles. Because you are dealing with glass, the glass can shatter and break and fly all over the place. The last thing you do is want to get it in your eye. And occasionally you'll need a hobby knife with a number 17 blade for certain areas of the screen that are difficult to get to with the iSesmo. This is only if you have a badly damaged screen. As you can see, we have the iPad here, and this isn't too bad of a break. So the first thing you're going to want to do is use a hot air gun to loosen up the adhesive on the glass. Now, the hot air gun can be purchased at almost any hardware store. The tip of this can get upward at about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, so you want to make sure that you're cautious with this. You don't want to touch yourself or lay it on any thing valuable that you don't want to risk burning. So we'll go ahead and turn it on and heat up our screen. You're going to start along this edge, the right edge. You're going to go to, it's nice and warm to where you can still touch it with your finger and it's not too hot. Now we'll start here with the iSesmo, and what we're going to do is we're going to insert it between the glass and the plastic bezel along the edge. So we want to go ahead and get that in there and start breaking out some of this glass. See, the glass comes out in little pieces. You want to make sure you have something to collect your glass on so you don't blow it all over the place when you hit it with hot air. As this starts cooling down, the adhesive will become stronger. So you want to try to keep the glass at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is where the adhesive will start releasing. So as we're going to go up, we're going to go ahead and continue doing this. Now you want to make sure that you don't stick the iSesmo too far to where you'll strike the display, because you'll scratch it or break it. Areas like this that are really badly shattered, as you see, you can continually and slowly dig it with the iSesmo, or you can take the hobby knife and just get along that metal frame and kind of scoot that glass up. You want to be careful. This is a razor knife and could cut you or harm anything that it touches. Okay, so now I'm in an area where the glass pieces are a little bit larger. So we'll go ahead and use the iSesmo. You can see I'm just breaking it off, taking my time, doing little pieces at a time. The larger areas, you can kind of lift it up and use your guitar pick to help you out. And when you get up in this area, you've got your smart cover sensor here, so you want to make sure you don't damage or cut that. And then you have your power flex cable. which has a protective plate on there to prevent you from accidentally damaging that. So once I get up here, I'm going to go ahead and go to this upper corner. And same thing is I'm just going to kind of gently slide it down under that adhesive. Get that nice and broken up. And then stick my guitar pick to prevent the glass from re-sticking to the frame. I'm going to continue and go up along the top edge in the same manner. As you can see, this digitizer is crumbling as I start prying. So when it becomes more difficult, we're going to have to heat up the area again. Now when you're using this, if the LCD is exposed, you want to make sure to keep the heat away from the LCD, because if it hits it, it can severely damage it. And you don't want to keep too much heat around the guitar picks, because those will melt as well. Like I say, you're just going enough to where you can comfortably keep your hand on the glass. I'll come up here, get my nylon spudger under. Keep working it with the iSesmo. Again, you don't want to be in a rush. You want to really take your time. Now this is a large chunk, so I want to get enough to get my nylon spudger in there to kind of help me out. And come all the way to this far corner, so you want to just keep working that. So now I'm going to start working at the bottom edge. Again, I'm going to heat up the adhesive, making sure I point away from the LCD. So again, I'm going to take my iSesmo here at this bottom edge. So once the digitizer really starts getting warm, it gets easier and easier to remove. Toward a point where I can almost open it like a book. If it's being stubborn, give it a, may have to pry up a little bit more. Break that seal. Okay, using my nylon spudger, I can get in here, safely start lifting the glass a little to where she'll open up. Now once your LCD is exposed, you do not want to apply any heat while the display is in here. If there's still glass remaining along the frame, you want to go ahead and just use your iSesmo, just enough to expose the screws. And this is where your the hobby knife comes in real handy. Now you don't want to touch the display at all with your fingers. So at this point, with it exposed like this, I'm going to go ahead and put on the pair of nitrile gloves, which were included in the kit. And what this will do is If you happen to touch the screen, it won't leave any fingerprints, which are very difficult to clean. But we do carry a product called the Lens Pen Sidekick, which is a little cloth that will take the the oil off your skin off the LCD. So I'm going to get in here a little more along this edge. As you notice, I'm keeping careful and I'm always pointing away from the display so that if I slip, I won't scratch the display. So I just want enough here to expose this. Again, you're not in any hurry. You want to take extreme caution and time. Now you could also use the iSesmo along this edge as well if you don't have the hobby knife. It works just as well. Get it under that glass. As you can see, it's a wider area, so you have more of a risk of hitting the LCD. And I know a lot of glass is settling on the display. We can gently brush it off. If you have a clean makeup brush, that works really well. And I'm just using a tissue to just kind of gently push off the particles. You don't want to rub it, otherwise you'll again scratch the LCD. This is soft enough to move those little fragments off the display. So I'm going to continue working along this edge. Okay, now I've got enough of the glass that I'm going to go ahead and remove the 4 screws holding the display in place using the included Phillips screwdriver. There's one in each corner. Now all 4 screws are the same size, so you don't have to worry about setting them in a specific order. Okay, now that all 4 screws are out, we're going to want to lift the display. Now the display will open this way. So you want to take your spudger and just gently lift the LCD up. Blow your glass off. And you want to lay it down, like I'll put a tissue down here at the bottom, so I'm not worried about the adhesive transferring onto the display. And again, I'm being very gentle and not moving this around. Okay, before we disconnect the LCD and the digitizer, we want to remove power from the logic board. Even though it's off, the logic board here is still connected to the battery here by the means of the single screw with 5 pins underneath this silver box. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove the screw located right in the center of the battery box. And then we're going to remove the screw over here just above the digitizer. Now you can just take the nylon guitar pick and place it in there just like that, and that brings up the logic board just enough to prevent damage. Or if you have a pair of side cutters, you can cut a little notch out in the guitar pick at about 4 millimeters wide, like this, so it creates a notch that'll slide right through the post right there. So now that that's safe enough to go ahead and start removing the LCD, we'll go ahead and peel the tape off the top of the LCD. And I'll go ahead and stick it to the battery box here just to remind me to place it back. Now the LCD goes into this connection. This is called a flexible printed circuit. And basically the back area is a hinge that presses the flex cable down onto these pins that you could visibly see here. Okay, to disconnect the LCD cable from the flexible printed circuit is we're going to use the flat end of the nylon spudger. We're going to place it at an angle and use the battery shield as a guide and just gently rotate it, and the door will just pop open. Once that's popped open, then you can go ahead and grab the flex cable and gently slide it out, and go ahead and set your LCD display to the side to protect it from any damage. Now the Digitizer connector is the same thing. It has the tape here. We'll go ahead and peel that off. And we'll go ahead and stick it back here on this shield just to serve as a reminder to put it back when we go to reassemble. Now the Digitizer flex cable has two flexible printed circuit that it goes into, and we're going to lift the door in the same manner using this back shield as leverage and gently set it down, and the door will pop up. So once the door's popped up, I'll go ahead and take the nylon spudger and slide it underneath the flex cable to break the adhesive that holds it to the inside of the frame, and then gently slide it out. So it'll slide straight out that way. Once that's off, and we'll go ahead and peel this back and dispose of the old Digitizer. So next thing is we're going to start cleaning any remaining glass or adhesive off the frame. You can use the iSesmo to kind of come around and scoot off any pieces of glass that may be stuck or any large chunks of the adhesive by using the flat edge. Now this your Wi-Fi cable, you want to be cautious to not rip or tear it. So we'll continue coming around, picking up any remaining adhesive. You want to take your time and just gently use a little bit of force, kind of scrape up any of the large chunks. If you have the hobby knife, it makes this job a lot easier because you're dealing with a razor blade edge. We're going to go all the way around and remove any of the large pieces of adhesive that's left. You want to be cautious around the front-facing camera. You don't want your iSesmo or hobby knife to slip and slice through the cable. And I'm not using a whole lot of force, and just a little bit of forward motion to peel off some of that adhesive. Now included in your kit is a single adhesive tape removal pad and two alcohol cleaning pads. Now the adhesive tape removal pad is used in most medical industries to remove leftover adhesive from tapes from the human skin. So this stuff is pretty safe. If you want, you can wear gloves. It has like an oily feel to it. So what we'll do is go ahead and open this up, and I like to take a tissue and just kind of bring off any excess fluid so that I don't have to worry about it dripping into the iPad. I'll fold this into a tiny little square, and then I'll slowly start running around the edge of the frame where all the adhesive is. Around the body to make sure that all the adhesive That remaining gets coated with this fluid. Okay, so you want to let that fluid sit on the adhesive for about 2 to 3 minutes. And that'll allow the adhesive to start loosening up. Once the adhesive's loosened up, you could actually take the flat end of the nylon spudger and start pushing the adhesive around. Any parts that come off, I'll just went onto a tissue or a piece of toilet paper. And again, I'm not digging, I'm just kind of pushing it around. Now for some of the more stubborn stuff, you can use the flat end of the iCesmo or the hobby knife. Okay, now that all the adhesive has been removed, we want to wipe off the remainder of the oil-based tape removal pad with the 2 alcohol pads. So go ahead and give it a good once all the way around. Remove any excess adhesive that may be pushed around, and it picks up that PDI fluid. I like to take the alcohol pad and also run it down inside the bezel channel, which is along this edge. A lot of times you get dirt and debris from usage of the iPad stuck down in there. So just kind of run it in there and push any dirt or debris that may be down there. I'm going to grab my second one and give it a second clean all the way over, just to make sure that any remaining fluid is picked up. Now you want the frame as clean as possible, because the cleaner the frame is, the better your new digitizer is going to adhere to the metal. If you have a lot of adhesive and debris left over, then it's not going to stick too well, and it'll end up over time popping off on you. Okay, and I'll go ahead and let that sit there and let the alcohol evaporate off, and then we'll start doing the reassembly. Okay, so your kit is going to come with a new digitizer that already has all the adhesive and the home button bracket and everything applied, along with the camera centering bracket already applied. And it's also going to have a new bezel and the adhesive for the bezel. Now if you turn the bezel over, it'll have a flat edge, and then you'll have an edge with a lip. The adhesive is placed onto the flat edge of the bezel. And if you look, the adhesive comes along, matches the cutouts within the bezel. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start applying this adhesive. Come along this edge is a long piece with a little notch cut out. So that will be this one here. So go ahead and start where the notch is cut out, and just running my finger down as I go so that it adheres to the underside of the bezel. This is the top edge, so you have the camera, front camera cutout, and the audio jack cutout. So that'll be the next short piece. I'll start right there in the center. Again, Run that flat as I go along. Then we'll put on the final piece. I'll start along the very end. Okay, now that the bezel adhesive is on, I'm going to go ahead and peel off the backing. I find it easier using a pair of tweezers, or you can use the edge of the iSesmo to separate the backing from the adhesive. Okay, now we're going to apply this back to our iPad. Now, if you have an iPad where there's any dents or dings in the corners, the bezel is not going to sit right. You want to kind of either get a metal file and flatten that edge out, or you could use a flathead screwdriver to kind of roll that back out so you get a nice flat surface again. On this one here, I don't have any major dents or dings, so it makes it easier to reattach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with any of the corners and lay the corner in first. Okay, now this laid there is I'm going to take the flat end of the nylon spudger and I'm going to actually press the bezel in along the frame from the inside edge here. You want to make sure that gets all the way down inside there. What I like to do is hold my finger against the corner so it keeps the corner from popping out of place while I'll do the remainder of these. I'm going to run along the top here. We're going to do this all the way around. And then lastly, on the last edge here, which on mine would be the bottom. And I'm going to give it one good run all the way around. Make sure that that bezel is sitting nice against the aluminum frame there. Okay, now that I have my new bezel in place, I'm ready to start attaching the digitizer and then the display. Since I'm going to be handling the LCD, I went ahead and put my gloves back on. And the first thing you want to do is attach the digitizer. So we'll go ahead and remove that out of the packaging. Now the digitizer cable's folded over and attached with this little piece of tape. Just go ahead and gently lift that little piece of tape and peel it off. Now fold the cable nice and flat again so it's resting like that. So what we're going to do is go ahead and slide the digitizer cable back into the flexible printed circuits like this. And using my nylon spudger to assist me. Now you're going to insert this cable till it stops. So the white lines here will almost disappear. Now see how this is a flexible cable, so I can move it a pretty good amount and get it put in, and you see the white lines have just disappeared. And I'm going to go ahead and close these doors just by running my finger across them and closing them down. So both doors should be in the down closed position. And then I'm going to peel the adhesive off the back side here of the flex cable. And then use my nylon spudger here, go ahead and flatten that against the frame. Now, not applying any pressure whatsoever. You don't want to rip or tear or puncture this cable, otherwise your touchscreen won't work. So once that's in, let's go ahead and just keep running it in. Now it's a good idea when you're doing this is you want to try to keep the digitizer up on the edge here, because if it's down, you can pull this cable and tear it where it attaches down here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this down and remove this second piece of adhesive if it's installed. Just like that. And then this cable should gently tuck right there and go within the curvature of the frame. So I can take that here and tuck it down inside. Now I'm not using any force. I'm just gently laying it down so that the cable is nice and flat all along the inside of the frame. Now that I've got this all cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and lay down another tissue along this edge just to protect the surface of my display from any scratching. So go ahead and set this here upside down. Take my cable and slide it into the display here. Now, same thing is you're going to slide this in until the white line almost disappears, and then go ahead and run your finger down to close that door. We still have the tool in here separating the battery, so now I've safely attached the cables. I can slide this back out and place the screws back in place. Now the longer of the two screws will go into the battery port there. So now those are secure. I'm going to go ahead and take my pieces of tape that I peeled off earlier and lay them back. So they're going to go between the cable and the plastic area of the flexible printed circuit here. So that was the LCD. Let's go ahead and do the same thing here to the digitizer. Once those are done, we can go ahead and flip the LCD back over and lay it back down in place. If the digitizer here falls down, it's no biggie. You just bring it back up on the edge, tuck it in, and drop the display down into place. I go along the same edge where the digitizer connects and then drop it in to where it sits down, and then we'll go ahead and attach the screws. Now you're only going to tighten the screws till they stop. You don't want to over tighten them because this aluminum alloy frame, the screws will strip. Now any dust or dirt that are remaining on the screen, I'm using this ESD safe brush, or if you have a cosmetic brush that has never been in makeup, as in brand new, then you can go ahead and use that and gently dust anything that may have settled on the display itself. And just gently brush it off. Again, I'm not applying any force in case there's any little bits of glass. We don't want to scratch the display at all. This is a very soft bristled brush. You can also use a natural paintbrush to kind of brush this off, which can also be found at any hardware store. We're going to go ahead and test this unit. We're not going to fully assemble it yet. We just want to make sure that everything that worked before the repair still works. So we'll go ahead and just rest the digitizer over the LCD and go ahead and power it on. Apple logo is always a good sign that the repair went well. Okay, now that the iPad has booted up, we're going to go ahead and test everything like we did before. Go ahead and make sure your volume up, your volume down, your mute. We already know the power button works because it turned on for us. We want to test both the rear and the front facing camera, and again record a small video and play it back to test the loudspeaker and the microphone. Now, because we haven't fully installed this, the home button itself isn't going to work. So what I'll do is just dry fit it down along the edge and press the home button. If it works and we know the home button bracket itself is in the proper alignment and touching the pins below it. Now we're going to test the same thing with the Digitizer to make sure we don't have any dead spots. So we're going to touch an icon till they all start shaking, and then I'm going to grab it and move it over every area of the Digitizer. If the icon drops, that could indicate a dead spot. In this case, because I'm wearing the gloves, it tends to bunch up and drop. We also want to make sure it goes across the page. So it goes both left and right side. Okay, and then again, touch my home button so the icon stopped jiggling. Okay, so we tested and we were satisfied the Digitizer is good to go. We didn't cause any harm to the unit or the display. Let's go ahead and power it back down and finish the assembly. Okay, now that the iPad is turned off, we'll go ahead and lift the Digitizer back up, making sure that we keep it up on this ledge. As you can see, the flex cable here will actually pass behind the LCD down into the frame. Now we want to take a good look at the LCD, and if any dust or dirt are still remaining, we again want to gently brush it off. If you accidentally got any fingerprints or anything, you want to clean it. What we highly recommend is this lens pen sidekick, which has a carbon-based material that will pick up any oils left by fingers on the screen, and it gives your display a nice clean look. And we'll very gently run it up and down the LCD. If you see any spots, which could happen just from breathing or anything like that, you can give a breath of air so that it fogs up the screen and then wipe it up. And this unit could also be used to clean the actual outside glass of the Digitizer for a long time. It gets about 100 wipes. So now we're ready to close this up. As you can tell, I still have my Digitizer sitting up on the edge here. So I'm going to start off by removing all the adhesive backing left over the Digitizer. To expose all the black adhesive. Now the center area inside also has a protective film on it, so at this point we're really not worried if our hands accidentally bump or touch it. Now when you get down toward the flex cable here, you just give this a little nudge here to kind of break it underneath, and then grab the lower edge here as well. Now come off, and sometimes you just got to give it a little lift and it'll come unstuck there. There we go. The key thing is you don't want to really jerk it around and risk tearing the flex cable there. Now lastly, we're going to peel off the protective layer on the inside of the Digitizer. Most importantly, once this layer comes off, you never want to touch the inside with your fingers You'll leave fingerprints on the inside and they do not come off very easily. And you don't want any dust settling on the inside as well. So before we do this, we're going to give our LCD one last brush through, make sure nothing is settled on it. Gently brush off any material, any dust or dirt that may have settled. And then we'll go ahead and remove this inner piece here, which sometimes can be a pain. If the tab breaks like it did here, you can take the iSesmo and very gently find a corner where you can get underneath it again. Now, as soon as you have that off, you want to close the iPad up as soon as possible. Prevent any more dust or dirt from settling. Now we're going to start by taking the right edge of the digitizer and lining it up like that, so that we still have this end kind of opened. The reason why is we want to double check to make sure that the digitizer cable here didn't stick against the glass, because that'll prevent you from closing this up properly. As you can see, it did not stick. It's still going straight. And try to get an angle here. There we go. So that when you do close this edge, it'll drop right down between the frame and the LCD, just like that. Now, once this is on, you want to take your fingers and you want to press the glass down. I can go ahead and remove my gloves now. So I'm going to go ahead and press the glass against the bezel here. Make sure I get good adhesion all the way around. And I'm using quite a bit of force. I mean, you're not really going to break the glass. And now lastly, now that everything is done and it's closed up, we want to go ahead and test it just one more time, make sure everything works. So test our home button, test our digitizer, make sure our volume up, volume down, our mute is still functioning, test that we have good Wi-Fi signal, and then we're going to grab an icon, and same thing is we're going to move it all over the screen. If the icon drops, that would indicate a dead spot. Make sure it streams from one page to the next. There we go, and put her back in place. So I'm satisfied everything on here is fully functional. If you want, you can go ahead and test the cameras again, front and rear. And then I'm going to go ahead and power it down one last time. When we go to seal this, you want to keep pressure along the frame for a good couple of hours. Generally, I like to leave it overnight, just to give that adhesive good chance to grab. Now, there are several ways of doing this. One way is to go ahead and pull off the protective layer on the outside and go ahead and again heat up the glass to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit along the edges, and then place this down on the envelope the digitizer came in like this, and then stack about 10 or 15 pounds of books on the top to apply pressure to the glass to let it sit. Now, the reason why you don't want to just lay it on a flat surface is because the plastic bezel actually sticks up slightly higher than the glass. So the only thing you'd be applying pressure to would be the outside plastic bezel. What we want is to get the inside here. Now, one of our technicians had developed a kit that we call the Jig Kit here. This is specially designed for the iPad 2, 3, and 4. So it comes with a base plate. So I can go ahead and set the iPad inside this base plate. And we'll go ahead and remove the protective screen here on the outside. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and reheat the glass. We want to get it pretty much about 100 degrees Fahrenheit all the way around, or get it as hot as your fingers can stand it. Because this jig kit is made of Baltic birch, you're not really going to harm it by sitting here with hot air unless you sit in one area, and of course it is just wood. So as I'm heating this here, the glass is getting nice and warm. Going all the way around. But I'm not staying in any area too long so I don't melt the plastic bezel that we just replaced. So once the glass is nice and warm, I'm going to shut off the heat, and then I'm going to apply the upper section of this jig clamp kit. And I'm going to take the bolts here and run it down to the top just to where it stops. You don't want to twist, you're just going to run it down to where it stops. Okay. We're going to do the same thing all the way around, alternating areas, and just taking the wing nuts down to where they stop. And again, I'm just going to check all the wing nuts, make sure they're not tight, but we don't want them too loose to where they're not doing anything. So again, you just give them a little nudge till they stop against the wood. Okay, once it's clamped in here, we'll go ahead and reheat the glass edges. You see all these slots cut in here is so that we have access to the edge where the glass meets the metal frame. We don't want to go in the center area. You want to avoid this area, but only stay along here. And just do it about a minute or two all the way around. You can put your hand here in the center. If you start feeling like the glass is getting too warm, you're probably good to go. You'll start feeling it along the inside edges here as that heat radiates. Again, I'm moving pretty quick because I'm just warming up the glass, but I'm not staying in any area to where I'm going to melt the home button or the plastic bezel. So once I'm satisfied that that's warm enough, I'll go ahead and let this cool down. I want to keep it in this clamp for a good 4 hours or so, just so that the adhesive really grabs that frame. Once that's done, we'll take it out of here and run through one last final check, and if everything's good, we're finished. Okay, so after a couple hours of being in the jig kit or whatever method you chose to close up your iPad, we're going to give her one last final check. So in this instance, we used the jig kit. I'll go ahead and remove this. Now this has a hole cut in the back so you can push the iPad out of. And we'll give it one last test by turning it on. Now earlier I was telling you about the sidekick. So if any fingerprints or anything on the digitizer can be easily wiped away, so you always have that nice new clean look. And it easily stows right here in its own case. I'm going to once again test by grabbing an icon, moving it all over the screen. Make sure there's no dead spots. Again, if there's a dead spot, the icon would drop. Test my home button. Okay, I have good Wi-Fi signal. My volume up, volume down, mute. Test the front rear cameras, microphone and loudspeaker again. So there you go. Your iPad looks as good as new.